Welcome to the A.L.T podcast or the A.L.T podcast, however you want to call it. It's your girl A.L.T. For those of you who might not have heard the first episode and you're wondering what is A.L.T., A.L.T are my initials, but I am doing this podcast because I feel like I have some alternative views to the general views that we have every day, hence the A.L.T or A.L.T podcast, however you want to call it. So I just woke up and there's so much in my heart that I want to share this morning, and so I'm going to, today I'm going to take a very sensitive path. I was going to do this podcast anonymously before, and I just thought about it. I'm not going to totally hide my identity, because if I do, the purpose of the podcast will be defeated, because the reason why I decided to start this podcast was because of the mental health battles that I faced in the last 2 years and how I came out of it. And since then, it's just been like really heavy on my heart to share my experience and, reach out to other people who might be going through the same thing and might not want to speak up, or they're in a place where they're not sure what they're doing and how to go about anything. And I totally understand, because when mine happened, speaking up was the last thing on my mind, because I didn't want anybody to think I was crazy. And I used to be the kind of person who would handle everything on my own. Like, I just tell myself that I'll be fine and want to, go through it alone. And for the first time in my life, I was clueless as to what to do. So I'm going to share my story, and I'm also going to put a link. I don't know how. I'll figure out how to put a link or an email in case anybody wants to share their story. And if you want us to go on this journey together, I'm not a psychologist. The only thing I can share is experience and what I've been through and how I came out of it. And I know my methods might not work for everybody, because mental health issues are caused by different things. But I'm going to try to help as much as I can. And maybe going forward, we can get doctors on our team who would be able to help people, therapists that would, be able to walk people through this process, because it is the ghetto, my people. It is the ghetto. So, my story goes like this. Okay, in 2019 was a tough year for me. I'm going to try to be as transparent as I can be. 2019 was a very, really, really tough year for me, because that was the year I fully left home. I'd always had independent traits, and I thought I was really independent, but I was still getting money from home. My parents were still paying some of my bills. I had businesses, like petty businesses I was doing, that kept me afloat. So I thought I was the person that knew something about to be independent. Little did I know that there's more to life than that bubble where I was. So if you're not Nigerian and you're listening to this, there's a program we do after we go to university here to serve our country for a year. It's called the NYSC. I honestly and personally believe that NYSC should be scrapped, because I hated every day of it and I did not see the point. Okay, I'm not going to get into my feelings and get personal. But that was my year, my NYSC year, and I left home to find my own path here, and I had a little issues with my family, so we sort of weren't talking. So I was on my own, and I didn't mind, because I thought, when I was in school, I used to do things on my own, so I got this. Until I got to the state where I was deployed and I had nowhere to stay. And that's another thing I learned on this journey, is know the people in your corner, Know the people in your corner, and those people are the only people you can really, really rely on, because The streets are not a happy place, honestly. So, I was almost so sure that I had a lot of friends in the states where I was deployed. So I was sure that, you know, getting a place to stay before I find my feet would not be an issue because I didn't ever close my doors to anybody when I was in school. I had my apartment and it was like an open place for people. Number two, because you are a certain way doesn't mean that people will be a certain way. It took me about 18 months to learn that. So I asked everybody, and everybody had a story to tell me. And I was very broke. I was really broke. And there's this thing they do in camp where I think I mentioned in the I mentioned in the first the pilot episode that I am a Christian, so I would sometimes chip in all of those things. And then I hadn't totally found my path. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I probably should have planned better at the time. Or it probably was a good thing. I would never know. But at the time, there's this thing where they say, oh, your first fruits. I understand it differently now, but at that time, I didn't have a very good understanding. So I'm going to just chip this in here. If you're a Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever you are, whatever religion you practice, I feel like you should know God for yourself. Of course, not disregarding what other people have been through or what the holy books say. But I feel like personal experiences shape your journey for you. Nothing else will ever shape your journey for you. So they talked about first fruits, and then I took my entire alawi. That's what it's called, our first pay as a youth corper. I took my entire alawi and sold it as first fruit seed. So I was left with nothing except the money I came to camp with. I didn't have anything on me. The only thing that helped me was because this state I was deployed to wasn't so foreign to me. I had been there a couple of times, so I kind of knew my way around. Okay, so after that, it was to get a place of primary assignment, and I did. Mind you, I used like almost my last money to get like the cheapest room possible to stay in one hotel in one corner somewhere. So that happened, and I finally got a place of primary assignment. But I wanted a place that offered accommodation, being that I couldn't afford to get an apartment for myself yet. And the first place I found wasn't offering accommodation. So I called one of my friends who used to, old friends. We used to have a thing back in the day, and I called them up, and he's like, oh, you can stay over, it's not a problem. And I'm like, okay, thank you, you're a lifesaver. I won't stay beyond 2 weeks, because I'm sure that after 2 weeks I would have found my way around. He's like, no problem, you're always welcome. So I stayed there, put my things there. And when I saw that the place of primary assignment where I wasn't they weren't giving me accommodation, I was trying everything I could to get a place of primary assignment. Okay, I'm giving too much details, and there's no time. I want to make this thing like 15 minutes long, so I'm going to give a summary from here. So I kept trying to find a place of primary assignment that would offer accommodation, but all the ones I was finding, the terms were not okay. It was either I wasn't going to get paid, or I was going to work every day of the week as a youth corper. And the laws in Nigeria are so terrible that nobody really cares. Because I threatened to report one, and they're like, go and report. Those kind of things. So I started to fall ill. And I used to pride in the fact that I had like the best immune system. In fact, I used to think somewhere at the back of my head that they could use my blood to make like vaccines, because up until then I had maybe malaria just once in my life. I never ever fell ill. My mom used to always thank God for that, because I had never been ill. I had never been to the hospital, because I needed to get checked or I was acting funny or feeling funny. Never. I was like Clark Kent, basically. But then this happened and I started to fall ill. The place where I was staying, I had stayed beyond 2 weeks and I was really uncomfortable. So I used to be a very proud person. I didn't know how to beg. But then I started asking like my big cousins, my uncles, or my aunts, people I knew that could help me. And everybody was like, okay, don't worry, I'll see what I can do. And I'm sure they're still seeing what they can do till now, 2021, but it's all good. So it was getting uncomfortable and I was broke and I couldn't totally depend on him. And I think at some point he got tired, and it is very, very, very understandable. Very understandable, because I mean, it's not everyone who wants someone in their space for longer than they said. So, attitude and all of that started to get in the way, and I'm like, you know what? I cannot do this. So I called another friend and she offered that I come and stay at her family house, but it was in the next state. So I would have to leave that state every morning to come to this state where I was deployed to go to work. And I did. I did that back and forth for like 2 to 3 months. And I had started to get my money. It was like 19.8 then. And it just wasn't working because they had like their own family issues, and it was like I was caught in the middle. My parents weren't still talking to me per se. So I called somebody and she's like, oh, I know someone at so and so place. Let me call him and see what he can do. And then they gave me a place with accommodation, but I was going to have to work weekends and I didn't care at the point. I just wanted my own space so that I could even continue my businesses. And then I went there and I now, it was better for a bit. In the middle of all of this going on, I was in a relationship and then it broke up because, I was having my own crazy to deal with. He was having his own crazy to deal with. And it was really bad for me because I would say that's the one person that I ever truly loved. And we had been together 3 years and that happened. So he broke me. But I like to form hard girl a lot. So I didn't let it, I didn't feel the emotion. I sort of buried it. And then when I was going for youth service, I had it in mind that, at the end of the youth service year, I would be a millionaire because it's me. I'm industrious, I'm enterprising. It's me, I'm going to make this money. And this is a city where people make money. It didn't occur to me that to make money wasn't going to be so easy. And there were things that I might have to do to make money. I just looked at other young women making money. I'm like, come on, they don't have 2 heads on their heads. That's another thing. When you're in a certain bubble or in a certain place or you're protected somehow, when you come out of it, sometimes it's a rude awakening. Because where I was coming from, I saw women work hard for their money and make their money. But then when I got here, it was almost like you had to give it up to get anything. And I'm like, I do not understand what's going on here. So that happened. And I started to feel some weird pockets of anxiety, like panic attacks, but like in pockets of 5 minutes maximum. It would just come like a wave and I would really panic, and then it would die down and not appear in like 3 months again. So I didn't think it was an issue. I thought maybe I was really stressed because I wasn't sleeping well, and then I was pressuring myself a lot. I was staying up to I make clothes, and I had this skincare line. I was staying up to make clothes, and staying up to make clothes. Where I was, there was hardly ever electricity, and my sewing machine was electric. So whenever there was light, I had to kill myself to make it. I'll come back from work as late as 10 p.m. and then work till when I can. or when there's for the period where there's electricity, and then like that. My life was like that. Uh, so that continued like that, and I guess it was stressful. And then the one person who had become my best friend and everything in the 3 years before was not there. I couldn't call him. I couldn't tell him this is what was going on. So I continued to cocoon myself. I have besties, yeah, and I am grateful every day for those women, because I don't know what my life would be if they were not in it. Shout out to you girls, man. I love you people. I love you guys so much. I don't know, I would have died basically if you guys were not there. And then so my housemates were like, they were really cool girls, but they always talked about how I was too much of a goody two shoes, how I needed to let loose a little, or nothing was going to work. And somehow I started to listen to them. Lesson number 3: when you are broken, it's easy to absorb anything in the environment where you are. It's like you put a broken I'm talking deep things now. It's like you put a broken vessel in a pond, yeah, and not expecting it to absorb the water through the cracks. Bruh, I have joined the Aspire to Maguire people. But for real though. So because I had been broken by, my falls, my hopes that had been dashed, and a heartbreak, which is a really big deal, and I hadn't dealt with them, it was easy for these things to seep in. And I actually began to think of doing things that I normally wouldn't. And I thank God till today that I never went through any of them. So that happened, and I started to put pressure on myself. But because of everything that had happened, I didn't care. I started to care less about what I ate, how I looked. And I used to be a very, very, I don't want to say fashionable, but I used to care, man. My looks were first for me, and I didn't care. And then I didn't go anywhere. I didn't used to go anywhere apart from work. Then once in a while, I'll just hang out with my friends, the ones that I had made in this city, because my other friends were not in the city and they only used to come and visit. And I started to wonder maybe something was wrong with me. I started to feel ugly. I gained weight, of course, because I wasn't working out and I was eating wrong. I started to gain weight and I started to feel ugly. And then people would say, oh, look at your tummy. Look at your tummy. And I'm like, and I'll let it get to me. These were things. I used to be a very confident person. Anyone who knows me knows that I used to ooze confidence. You would see me and see confidence. But then I started to, let these things get to me. I started to try hard to, fit in. Oh, what's the latest hair? How much is it? I tried to buy it and rather starve so that I could look the part. And I wasn't even going anywhere. So all of it was even wasting. I tried to make my skin look good. So I'm going to come to this in one of the podcasts about how being yellow is not good skincare. I mean, people just believe that when you say skincare, it means you have to be yellow. No, and no. Anyway, I bought this thing, and I was a skincare person, yeah. But I bought this thing because I wanted fast action. I mean, people said, oh, if your skin is clean, people would accept you more. Oh my God. Listening to you now, I'm like, God, I was in a really low place to have allowed all of these things, get to me. And then people are like, if your skin is really clean, it would, you would be more accepted, it will make you prettier. And I was actually getting darker for some reason, I don't know. Okay, I was always in the sun, I think. Maybe that's why I was getting darker. So I bought this product from this girl, and then, hey, I started to turn to UpNepa. So for people who don't know what UpNepa is the electrical company in Nigeria. And when you say UpNepa is because there's always electric failure. So they can decide to bring the lights or take the lights at any time. So when we see lights, we shout UpNepa. So that light that we see is what I was beginning to turn to, and I was becoming unnecessarily light. And I even had a mustache. Like, when I mean mustache, I don't mean hair mustache. I mean, when you get so light that your upper lip is lighter than the rest of your face. I'm like, God. That's when I started to ask myself, So how did we get here? Because I used to sit down and laugh at the people who had those things. I used to laugh at like, is it by force? And then, so I think that hit me and I started to have like a reality check from then. And the funny thing is, the people who were stringing me along, who I was listening to, were the same ones who come and make fun of me and be like, this is also is making you yellow. Anyway, they will see yellow girl now, you wear your gown. By the time you sit down, they will see your tummy, all of that. And I let it get to me so much. And then I started to ask, what's wrong with me? I already felt ugly at the time. I already felt, I used to feel really smart, and I started to feel really stupid at the time because everything I was passionate about had disappeared. I didn't have a will to live per se. And then other problems underlying, and I think it just built up. And I was almost always broke because I didn't have any other business to sustain me. I was living on that 19.8, and the company where I was working for could decide to just pay you 10k today and not pay you again, and it was ghetto for me. It was really hard. Family issues were still there. We had tried to sort them out, but they were still there off and on. And maybe one day I'll be able to open up about one, but there's a particular issue that's been there since I was a child. And at that time, I needed it to be done so that this is my family. I want to be able to, relate with you people. And I couldn't. So all of it was just so much for me. It was so much for me. Like, I felt like I had lost myself totally. I didn't even know who I was. I didn't know what I was doing. It was almost like I was in a limbo. So the pockets of anxiety started to increase. They became more. Instead of like once in 3 months, or like every month, then to like 2 weeks, then every week. I could be literally gisting, and then a flash of panic would just hit me, and it would shake me for it was like, I said 5 minutes before, yes, then increased to like 10 minutes, then to like 40 minutes, but then it always went away. And I started to think, what's the point? What's the point of living? So I sent a voice note to my mother. I didn't want to tell her I was going to kill myself. I just told her that, I just aired how I was feeling about the whole family issues, and I basically disowned myself. I disowned myself from family. I'm like, you guys can do your thing, just forget I exist. And somehow she was at my gate the next morning, and I don't know how. I had poison. I had gotten the poison. I had gotten everything already, but I just couldn't take it in. And the next morning I was going to, and then she was at my gates, and that was a change, a welcome change for me. So at that time when she came, we talked, we cried. I opened up as much as I could to tell her, because I couldn't tell her everything. People in their generation and in our generation can't relate to everything. So I'm looking and I see that I've been talking for 23 minutes. I'm just going to make a part 2 of this so that I don't keep you guys listening for an entire hour. I'll make a part 2 of it. But when that happened, I started to feel better. That was November 2019 when that finally happened. I started to feel better, and I thought, from then on it would be better. It was for a bit until February, March, and I'll tell you why in the next podcast. Thank you for listening.